What's up, everyone? Welcome to Shot Callers Esports. I'm Matt Hempstead, and today we're going to talk about some teams going in the absolute wrong direction. CLG and SKT kind of on the decline, but I don't really fully understand how CLG can just do what they do, so I'm going to talk to James Bates about it. How you doing, James?
Doing well, thank you. I didn't realize I was on. Sorry about the head scratch there.
No problem. Maybe we can edit it out for you, but so CLG, my analogy for them is kind of like a Kinder Surprise. No matter how good the chocolate is, you know the toy is pretty much going to suck at some point in time. Probably going to be one of those 4-piece puzzles that are pretty easy to put together. So CLG is just this team. You know they're going to have a pretty good split overall, but even if they're performing at the top of their level, eventually they're going to lose to a team you don't expect. So their first set was against FlyQuest, and okay performance, I guess they won barely. And then in the second set to Dignitas, out of nowhere, they looked awful and lost. So for CLG, all of a sudden, they're kind of in the state of flux after Rift Rivals. You would expect them to be performing pretty well with 2 weeks to prepare. Instead, they look kind of shaky. What are your thoughts on that, James?
Well, there's two different trains of thoughts I have on that one. First of all, their victory against FlyQuest, I mean, they did 2-0 them, so I'm not sure if I would call it necessarily shaky. I think it's more chalked down to CLG's always been with that team that relies on preparation in order to win matches very strongly. You know, they have probably the best coach in North America. I think most people would say in Zix. And you can't prepare for FlyQuest, right? They are always that team that just plays Mordekaiser, I guess, you know, because why not? And I think that the reason why I'd say Dignitas sort of might have had their number 2 is this is also the first week they played Adrian, if I recall. They acquired him a few weeks back. And if you look at the score line of the game, it's pretty obvious what happened there. I think people weren't expecting Adrian to have learned Thresh. And but the second point that I would make is that the metagame has shifted a lot recently, especially in the jungle role, and this is definitely not a situation that benefits Dardock. You know, he always was known for being the Kha'Zix, the Lee Sin player, all those kinds of things. Well, now you're playing Gragas and Nunu and all this stuff that you don't make plays on well, I mean, you do on Gragas, but you don't play Nunu and make plays. You know, it's much more limited in terms of his ability to impact the game individually, and more importantly, even when he is playing Gragas or whatnot, the way he's doing it is way different. Because we're used to seeing Dardock put up the best score lines, right? Just kill people all across the map. You don't kill people as Gragas with a Cinder Hulk. You kind of just stand in the way. So, you know, I don't want to say that CLG would be better right now if they had Xmithy, but I can't help but notice that Immortals won all their games.
That's a very good point. And yeah, the meta is definitely going towards that tank style. You've seen Sejuani come out of nowhere. Jungle Maokai is going to be a thing potentially.
I was to say Sejuani one trick. It was not out of nowhere for me. I've been playing her for months.
Yeah, fair enough. But you're right. It is Dardock's not known to be a tank player. And on this Gragas, he doesn't always look super comfortable. And he just can't carry the games like he wants to do all the time, which leads to my next point is both sets, after game 1, Dardock went out regardless of win or lose, and Omar God came in, someone who was playing on CLG Black for them. And I mean, on Twitter, Dardock came out and said that it's nothing to do with any personal issues, any attitude problems. It's just to get Omar God some reps, and he deserves it. He's been playing well in scrims. Do you agree that's all it is, or do you think there's something that we're not really smelling here?
Oh, I don't like to opine on the inner workings of teams because you really just don't know.
Sure.
For example, the fact that Dardock was incredibly toxic on Team Liquid was something that you couldn't have possibly guessed early on in their split. But I would have to say that it probably seems like it is just get the new guy in there. CLG are on top of the league, and when you're ahead, I think they're ahead by 2 games or something along those lines.
Now they're all tied up with 2 other teams. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, at the start of the week, they were winning. Yeah. They were winning. And that is the time when you put in the new blood, right? It was like, oh, this game doesn't matter too much. Let's see what this guy can do. Obviously, sort of mixed results there. But I don't think there's any reason to assume at this point that Dardock's some sort of problem. Maybe in the future if his performance keeps slipping. But as I remember, Dardock's big problem over on Team Liquid was that she just didn't feel like other people on the team were working as hard as he was, right? I don't think there's any reason to believe that's what's happening on CLG, especially because there's other members of the team who have stepped up impressively over the course of the split, like Hui, for example.
Yeah, I kind of believe as well what Dardock's saying. I don't think that he's having any issues with his teammates getting along or whatnot. Let's skip over to the LCK, where there's, again, out of nowhere, SKT, they lost to World Elite at Rift Rivals, and then they come back to the LCK and they lose 6 straight games after the Green Wings lost to the Barbecue Olivers in a clean sweep. all of a sudden the Green Wings
Well, the
go and
Afreeca
sweep
Freaks almost
SKT.
lost the barbecue Olivers last night too.
Yeah, I
so
don't.
maybe the barbecue Olivers are just better than we think.
It's been a strange week, and SKT now lost 6 straight games. And what do you think is the reason for this? Is it just the whole meta being changed? Because to me, it looks like they're kind of picking in the past.
Brad, I hate how you gave me a nice hook, so I have to lead into a serious point, so I can't make the joke about swimming back to Korea being the reason why they're so bad.
Yeah, fair enough.
So get that one in there. The Korean fans have not been kind to SKT since they lost to World Elite.
No.
But yeah, I think there's definitely a grand truth to what you're saying. I just finished watching the Jin Air series a couple hours ago, and I thought it was very strange that you see Wolf playing Lulu. I mean, Zyra is still sort of in the metagame, but that's pretty much only for core JJ. I think he's the only player who's really had a lot of success with it. And that's just, I mean, he can do whatever he wants. But it was really jarring to watch this Lulu versus Kennen game, the support role, and just to see exactly how far that style of play has fallen, right? And I think that it was a drafting issue across the board in both games, especially the second game where you pick this like Varus Lulu-centric comp against a Camille, and it's like, oh, well, Varus is in this box now. And it went about as well as you'd expect. But the other more troubling aspect of it is that Faker's KDAs, I've just finished going over the stats for the last few weeks, and Faker's KDAs are slipping very quickly. You know, he has the worst KDA on his team right now, and part of the reason how SKT is losing is he's just getting camped, and it's working. And I remember 2014. I remember watching SKT then, and that's what happened. Is Faker's the best player in the world, don't get me wrong, but he knows he is. And when he's on teams, when he has like Marin, Duke, or when Bang, when he's performing well on it, he feels okay stepping back and playing more safely. But I think what's probably starting to go on is he's seen Huni, he's seen Untara both start to get exposed and get wrecked by people. You know, Huni and Untara both got smashed by Kuve of all people, right?
Yeah.
So last time we saw that kind of thing happen, that's when you saw, you know, Faker playing Lissandra and Karma and dying 6 times in laning phase because the enemy jungler just walked mid and got a free kill. And the reason why it's really worrisome is that he doesn't have Bangy on the team anymore. The way they always got out of that is you send Bangy to mid lane and he just camps mid, and then you 2v2 and you win because you have Faker. But neither Blank nor Peanut seem to want to do that. So I don't know what the way forward for SKT is. It doesn't just seem like their champions picks are stuck in the past. It seems like their mindset might be slipping back to that year they don't like to talk about as well.
Yeah, it definitely also seems like a lack of adjustment. I mean, after you see Faker get camped over and over, at some point you got to tell your junglers, whether it's Peanut or whomever, Blank, to just, you know, start playing around the mid lane a little bit more. And part of it too is that in these early games, they're just falling behind so much because, especially in this Jin Air series, was outclassing Blank and Peanut.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. Like I watch LCK a lot more than I watch the other regions, and I'll say the harsh thing here. Like Peanut does not have a place in this roster. It's become very obvious that, you know, he was maybe the best jungler in the world last year.
Sure.
Maybe. I would say that that was actually pretty hotly contested with him, Score and Ambition by the end of the series, or by the end of the season. But he's not this year at all. And the metagame is moving in a hostile direction for him. And I think that the Rocks Tigers play style, where they really did go all out whenever they wanted to, fit him a lot better than SKT's more like controlled style. He's not a controlled player. And at the end of the day, that's a huge problem if you don't match up stylistically with the rest of your team. Blank, a little bit less of a problem, but I think that people are forgetting that Blank wasn't really all that great even at his peak, right? So the fact that he's getting smashed by maybe is a little bit concerning, but Ambition, Score, if these kind of guys run over him, it's no big deal because they did that last year. So I don't want to say it all comes down to any one position in SKT, and I think that focusing on any individual, saying they're getting outclassed, that's just not fair because, you know, Peanut and Blank got outclassed, but Huni and Tara have been outclassed. Faker's been getting outclassed by Crown, and now Kuzan. Like, it's everything, and maybe it's just that they're exhausted because they've been in every international tournament for like 2 years now, and maybe that's what it comes down to. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely not one particular role because you mentioned Faker. He looked pretty off, and just it's hard to perform when you're getting camped all the time, and then your bot lane is playing this off meta stuff. So there's definitely big concerns about SKT. I'm going to ask you to predict if they can get back on the horse.
So it comes down to what's their path to getting to Worlds, right? with the standings the way they are, there's two possible. I think that it's likely they'll make it to Worlds. First of all, it's likely that they'll make it to Worlds. But there's two ways to go about it. Samsung, I think, pretty much has first place tied up at this point. The only person left that they could play that they could really lose to is KT Rolster, and KT Rolster can't overtake them. SKT really can't overtake them. There's only 5 games left in the season, right? And so you end up in this situation where Samsung isn't going to get wiped out by KT Rolster before they get to the finals of the playoffs anymore. So I think Samsung pretty much wins the split at this point, unless KT Rolster is the team that makes it there. But KT Rolster will have to fight SKT, Afreeca Freaks. Like, they're not going to be in second place, probably. It'll probably be Longzhu, and I don't think they're going to win that. So I think Samsung probably wins the split, and then you have to ask, well, who goes by match points? And if KT Rolster's in third place and SKT's not even in the playoffs, then KT Rolster wins off match points, right? So you have SKT who has to go through this gauntlet, which will probably be like Afreeca, Longzhu, Jin Air, all teams that they've lost to. So Is there a path there? Of course there's a path there. It's SKT. You don't bet against Faker. But it is actually looking more difficult. And there's these teams that people aren't talking about because they're not the big ones, that are the well-known kitchen table names around the world. But I gotta tell you, man, Longzhu's looking better than the Rocks Tigers did sometimes. And I'm not counting out. I'm never going to count out a team with Marin any more than I'll count out a team with Faker, right? It's hard to make a prediction this year. It's closer than it's probably ever been. I just hope Samsung win.